Hello and welcome back to the podcast. So, today we're looking at a really crucial topic which I think is overlooked massively in the estate agency world. And it's actually one of the biggest topics I talk to clients with when they first have an initial discovery call about working with ourselves, just work out kind of where they're sort of aligning themselves at the moment. It kind of is a real telling fact about how their estate agency business is going. So effectively what we're talking about today is about finding your niche in your estate agency business. So I can talk about personal experience here in many formats across businesses across the years and how it's absolutely crucial to secure a niche for your business to make sure you can thrive into the future. Now, as much as the idea of being someone for everyone sounds absolutely fantastic, in reality, this unfortunately doesn't work out. It's very, very hard to be an estate agent that sells £100,000 flats, but also sells £3 million properties. In fact, I would say it's almost impossible. If someone can think of a brand that does this and does it successfully, by all means, email it across to me and I'll give them a big fat high five. So basically what we're looking at here is looking at two parts of this. Number one part is the geographical side of things, which is kind of the easier part of the conversation. And the second part of it is the demographical side of things, which is a slightly harder conversation to get your head around first of all. So let's talk about the geographic. Let's start with the easy bit to start off with. So let's talk about the geography of where we should be looking for our clients and our niches. So when I first talk to clients who start working with ourselves, one thing I talk to them about is where they're focusing their times at the moment. Now, this varies massively. Sometimes this is I focus on an entire county. Usually it's I focus on an entire city or town. Sometimes it's multi-counties, and that's kind of really over the top sort of thing. Now, I understand the logic behind this when people target a large area. You look at it and go, more households equal more homeowners, which equal more valuations, more sales, more money, etc. I get it. Absolutely fine. Unfortunately, though, that sort of idea in mind, basically what you're doing is diluting yourself down massively. So instead of a small area, being absolutely fans of your business, know what you do, know you're a great estate agent, instead what you say, you dilute yourself down over a large area to the point where no one really knows who you are and knows how good you are at your job. And I'd imagine, if I'm going to kind of put my neck on the line here, if you're listening to this at the moment, you might think to yourself, not many people know that I'm a brilliant estate agent. So from the clients I talk to day in, day out, lots of them are fantastic estate agents. Get them in front of people in the living room. They will convert those properties to listings. They'll do a great job presenting them, showing them offer negotiation, all that sort of stuff, right the way through to completion. They are the people you want in front of you. But as we know for the industry standard, the average estate agent in the UK is competing against 12 other estate agents. The public can name three. So straight away, if you're not in those three, you could be the most amazing agent in the world, but no one knows who you are. Therefore, no one's going to pick up the phone to yourself. So our goal, our mission, first of all, is to make sure we're in those three people. So if anybody thinks about selling their property because they want to upsize, downsize, divorce, whatever it may be, their first thought is, yeah, I know those guys. They're an agent. They're local. They're listing. They're selling properties. I should give them a quick call. So where we're diluting ourselves down over a large area, we're not allowing that to happen. Whereas I was Mr. So-and-so development in my town and I put all my mark in that area and I sell properties and I list properties there, it wouldn't take long for people, the penny to drop, people to go, yeah, great, I know Chris is the agent to use in this sort of area. At least you'll get called out on the valuation where you can then show off and kind of double down and show exactly how you are the agent for them to pick. So, size wise, let's talk about how big a patch you should be picking. So, I've put this in your first £100,000 estate agency, and I absolutely stick by it. The average estate agent, one person band, should have about 5,000 households per full-time member of staff within their business. And when I say full-time members of staff, I don't mean things like administration, for example. I mean front of house, estate agency, negotiators, valuers, associates, whatever it may be, that are kind of on the front line of the business. So easy bit of maths here. If you've got two members of staff that, you've got a negotiator and you're a lister, for example, great, fantastic. Well, that should be enough to kind of cope with about 10,000 households in your local area. Now, in a perfect world, they should be one area. That should be one patch of your town, and it might be the north of your town, the south of your town, certain developments, whatever it may be. And that should be one patch. As a worst case scenario, you can divide that up into smaller areas. So you could divide that into 2,500 areas, for example. So that equals our 5,000 household area. But ideally, they should be as close together as possible for two reasons. First of all, commuting wise. So practicalities wise, you can't be in two places at once. And ideally, we don't really want you zigzagging up and down the ring road of your town to go to the north of the town, to the south of the town, for example. You want to have one core patch that you can spend your time in and you can kind of get your business and marketing in that area as much as possible. The second part of it is we want to condense our message as much as we possibly can do. So instead of having two areas that are kind of doing okay and they're doing all right, and we're known in those areas sort of thing, all right, we want to have one core area where everyone's like, yeah, great, Bob's your guy. Bob's your agent. Guy gets so many. I see his boards everywhere. I see his leaflets. I see his social media, for example. He knocked on my front door 2 weeks ago. Bob's your guy. That's where we want to get to. So you can split them up, but ideally they should be as close together as possible. Now, when picking these areas, we don't just look at it and go, dartboard in the map. I live in this part of town, therefore that's a good place for me to go to. Ideally, we want to look at areas have the numbers of properties, the quantity and quality of properties as well, that we are going to have to give ourselves the business we need for that area. So there's no point going, right, I'm going to pick this 5,000 household area where no one sold for the last 10 years. Effectively, we're waiting for everyone to die before they sell their property. That is not a good area in the grand scheme of things. We're looking for quite a transient area where probably properties come on the market on a regular basis and they sell as well. Easy place to look for this. Look on Rightmove. You can see how many listings are in a certain part of town. You can see how many sales compared to listings and start comparing these to start off with. So if you haven't launched your estate agency business yet, this is like job number one. So before you even launch, great, let's do some research in our core areas. Where do we want to be? Where do we not want to be? There'll be one or two areas where you think, yeah, great. People are listing, they're selling. That's the right sort of property I want to be dealing with as well. So that's a good place to start. If you're launched and you're up and running already, it's never too late. It is never too late to focus on the core area you think you should be focusing on. So do that research behind the scenes and go, actually, I'm putting all my marketing, blood, sweat, and tears into an area that isn't as good as it could be. I should maybe just look to move that fence around slightly and kind of start focusing on a new area instead. So that is the very short story when it comes to the geography side of things. Now let's talk about the demographic side of things. So this is who your ideal client is. Now, again, as we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we can't be someone for everybody. It's very hard to be the buy-to-let expert, the grandma's favorite, the first-time buyer expert. We've got to be an area of our business where they're like, if you've got a property in this part of town and you tick this, this, and this box, you are the right person for me. That is what we're looking for here. If you are running a business already, there's a really easy way to work this out. So what you want to do is form 3 lists on a piece of paper. You can download this from your CRM system. You can just go to the back of your diary and just jot it down if you're sat in your car waiting for reviewing. So there's 3 lists you should make. Number 1 is which properties have brought you in the most money into your business. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily stock that's on the market. You might have had a house on the market with yourself for the last 2 years that's £2 million, and when I sell it, I'll get a 30 grand fee, etc. Well, that is a liability to business until it sells. So only be including things that have sold, recently completed, for example, actually gone through, and you've actually had some money off the back of it. So which ones are bringing us the most cash into our business? Second list to go through is actually which ones were the easiest to fulfill. And what we mean by that is basically which ones sold really quickly and weren't much work. So I hosted an open day, 15 people turned up. I got 3 offers on Monday morning. I sold it. Vendors are over the moon. Thank you very much. So list a top 10 list down of all the properties in order of how quickly they sold and how little stress they caused yourself effectively. Once you've done that, the final list is actually how you got on with the vendors. Now, the sort of slightly immature test of me for this is if you've got any of your vendor updates where you rolled your eyes slightly every week and thought, I really don't want to phone Mrs. Jones, she's an absolute pain in the backside, probably put her towards the bottom of the list. But if you've got particular vendors you dealt with where you're like, actually, Mr. Smith was lovely, he was a great guy, I loved his family, they were all really friendly, they got us a bottle of wine to say thank you, great, they should be towards the top of the list. So in fact, we've got 3 lists there. Who we got on with really well, who got us the most money, and how easy it was to fulfill their sale on their property. So how well did we kind of sell their property? How quick did it go through? Once you look at that list, you're looking for common themes. So there's a mathematical way of doing it and a non-mathematical way of doing it. The non-mathematical way of doing it is just look at the list and look at it from top to bottom and go, right, what sort of properties and which properties are coming up time and time again? Well, One New Road is number 1, it's number 2, it's number 1 on the next list. Okay, well, that's probably not a bad place to start. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a list of 10 properties here, but the more you have got, the better your data is going to be. So if you've only sold 3 properties, for example, it's going to be a pretty short list, and you might have just picked the only really nice old lady to sell for in your town who had a really great bungalow. The rest of them might be horrible. So the more data you've got here, the better. The other way of looking at it is give those properties a number from 1 to 10 if you've got 10 on the list, for example. So 1 being top step of the podium, they were amazing, it sold really quickly, and do that for each of the lists. Then add up the numbers across the board. So find the same properties and add up what their total score is. What you're looking for here is the lower number, the better. So the best score you can have is 3, because basically means you're first in all 3 of those columns. Great, then therefore that is kind of your ideal client you're looking at. But don't just rely on one particular property or one particular vendor who is really nice, for example. You want to have a couple that sort of back up that message to go through. So kind of don't jump into it just because you've sold one property to a first-time buyer and it sold really quickly and they were lovely and you got a decent fee on it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to be that way. So make sure you get kind of a good cross section. So therefore, the more you can get on that list, the better, because that'll kind of bring the proof to the surface effectively. So that is how you'd look at it if you've got a business that is running at the moment. You can work through, write those 3 lists down and look at it and take a step back and go, actually, turns out I'm the family expert of the town. Every time I have a family property that comes on the market with myself, I sell it really quickly. They're lovely to deal with and I get paid really well off the back of it. Okay, well, let's try our hardest to get some more family properties within our core area, obviously, onto the market with ourselves, because clearly they're working really well for us. If you've not launched your estate agency business yet, some of this is going to be fairly hypothetical. Obviously, the geography of where we're focusing to start off with, great, we can do that, no problem at all. We can go onto Rightmove and various other portals and see what's moving and what's not moving, houses come on the market, etc. But with regard to who you're looking at, you want to take a step back and go, right, actually, who do I think my ideal client is? What is their age? Do they have kids? Are they retiring? Are they sort of young and aspiring? Or are they old and going downhill sort of thing? You need to look at it and go, where does my demographic sit, and focus towards that. So have an ideal client. And I know it sounds super cheesy and I always grimace myself when people say this, but give them a name. My target is Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They are 40 years old. They've got 2 kids. They've got a dog. He goes cycling on Sundays and she goes and walks the kids up to the park at the weekends. Great. They do these social activities. He earns this, she earns that. This is what they do. This is what they're looking for. This is what is important to them. Now, if you haven't launched a business yet, where this is slightly hypothetical at the moment, one of the most important things to do is to review it over time. So I did this one of my own clients about 2-3 weeks ago now, and we actually took a step back about where their business was today. Now, when they first launched the business, they were trying to go for really higher end properties. I mean, we're talking like multi millions here of properties. But actually, over time, they were getting dragged more and more to kind of the £1 million, 800,000 in that sort of ballpark. And those are the ones that are listing and those are the ones that are selling. To the point where I said to them, if I cross through all your expensive properties right now, your business would look no different. You've still got the same pipeline under offer and you've still got the same amount of available fees in your for sale pipeline as well. It would look no different whatsoever. The market is showing you where you should be focusing your business. They're saying, yeah, top end of the market, yeah, it's not quite clicking for us right now. But the middle part of the market, or that middle higher end of the market, 800 to a million, for example, everyone loves you. Everyone loves you. They're paying you a brilliant fee, for example. It's working really, really well. So the writing's on the wall because those people in those sort of properties are waving their hand and saying, you're the right sort of agent for us. We would love to work with you. So therefore, instead of swimming against the tide and going, I must be a high-end agent, I must be a high-end agent, I must be a high-end agent, actually, there's a time and a place to take a step back and go, actually, this is where my marketplace is. And this is where the demand is going for. And this is maybe where I should double down my efforts. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily you should give up your dreams of being a high-end estate agent, because it's your business and you can do whatever you like with it. But your options are either swim against the tide, which is going, I must be in this marketplace because 2 years ago when I first launched my business, this is what I wanted to do. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Or there's going, actually, this may not be my initial kind of dream when I first launched my estate agency business, but actually it's going really well. I'm dealing with nice vendors, I'm making a shed ton of money, and everyone's coming on the market, they're selling, lots of reviews and high fives all around. So don't be stuck in your lane forever, swimming against the tide. Review it on a regular basis, and this is probably every year or so, every 6 months, that sort of direction, to see where your marketplace is at the moment, what's working and what's not working. Now, there is a larger conversation here, which I'll say for a future podcast, which is where you've got that now, you've got the geographical side of things and the demographic side of things. You've got a really unique message for those people with regard to your marketing, because you know who they are. You know where they live. You know what they're into. You know what they're not into. You know what their questions are about moving home. You know what their pain points are. And you get a whole marketing campaign based on that. But first things first, we need to work out on who on earth we actually want to work with and where we actually want to work within our patch. Thank you for listening in today. I hope you've got some value from that. I'll catch up with you really soon and I'll see you on the next episode.